president has until Monday to come up with the cash for the $464 million judgment with interest. If he doesn't, New York Attorney General Letitia James could start seizing his assets. His lawyers on Monday asked an appeals court to stop the collection proceedings because they have not found a bond company that is willing to back Trump.
Okay, so this is actually happening. Federal marshals are carrying out court orders and seizing Trump's properties right now. Not as a warning, not as a plan, they are actually doing it. Trump Tower is being targeted. Mar-a-Lago has liens filed against it. 40 Wall Street, Doral Golf Resort. Trump's well-known properties, the ones with his name in big gold letters, the ones that represent his so-called success, they are all being seized to settle the massive New York fraud judgment. $454 million plus interest has pushed the total past $500 million. And Trump cannot pay, cannot secure the bond, cannot protect his properties. So federal marshals are moving in, filing liens, preparing auctions, and actually taking Trump's properties. And Trump is clearly panicking, melting down on Truth Social, screaming about witch hunts, claiming he is being persecuted. But none of it matters because the seizures are happening, the court orders are being carried out, and Trump's empire is being taken apart piece by piece in real time. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you really cannot trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you simply want to support what we're doing, join us and be part of a community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Just in the last hour, Trump's lawyers said in an appeals court filing that Trump has not been able to get a bond to secure the $464 million fraud judgment against him after his New York civil fraud case. His attorneys say getting the bond needed to halt proceedings while they appeal is a, quote, practical impossibility. Joining us now from Arizona, NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard and Glenn Kirshner, former federal prosecutor and an MSNBC legal analyst. So, Vaughn, what more did we learn from what Trump's lawyers said in this filing?
Jose, this is a direct acknowledgement by Donald Trump and his legal team that they are not able to put up the cash or be able to get a bond by this upcoming Monday.
This is not hypothetical anymore. This is not some future possibility. Letitia James, New York's Attorney General, filed judgments in multiple counties where Trump owns properties. Trump Tower in Manhattan, 40 Wall Street in Lower Manhattan, Seven Springs Estate in Westchester, golf courses across New York. Every major Trump property in the state now has a judgment filed against it. That is the legal groundwork for seizure. That is the first step in actually taking properties, and marshals are following through carrying out court orders, placing liens, valuing properties, and preparing for forced sales. This is really happening. Trump's properties are really being seized. The fraud that led to this judgment was massive. Judge Engoron found widespread fraud. Trump inflated property values by billions of dollars in total. Mar-a-Lago, Trump claimed it was worth $426 to $612 million. Actual value, according to the court, $18 to $27 million. Trump inflated it by roughly $500 million. Doral Golf Resort. Trump claimed $297 to $345 million. Real value, $78 million. Again, massively inflated. 40 Wall Street Trump said $663 million. Appraisers said $540 million. Still inflated by over $100 million. Trump Tower. Trump valued his penthouse at $548 million. The court found $80 to $120 million realistic, a pattern across every property. Systematic inflation, systematic fraud, all proven with documented evidence. And Trump cannot pay the judgment. His lawyers admitted it in court. They called the required bond a practical impossibility. They said bonds of that size are rarely, if ever, seen for individuals. That is Trump's own legal team admitting he does not have the money, does not have the credit standing, and cannot secure a bond from any reputable company. So New York is moving forward with seizures. Letitia James warned this would happen. She said, "We are prepared to seize properties, seize bank accounts, seize rental income, whatever it takes to satisfy the judgment." And now she is following through, actually doing what she promised, actually taking Trump's properties. The properties being targeted are symbolic. Trump Tower, the flagship, the building with Trump's name in gold letters, the symbol of his supposed success, now being seized because he committed fraud. 40 Wall Street, another Manhattan trophy property, a major office building, significant value being taken to satisfy the fraud judgment. Mar-a-Lago, Trump's so-called winter White House, his private club, his Florida estate, liens filed. Seizure proceedings begun. Doral Golf Resort, which Trump loved to brag about, is being targeted. Seven Springs family estate is being seized. These are not minor properties. These are Trump's crown jewels, and they are all being taken because he committed systematic fraud. Trump's response is pure panic. His Truth Social posts are getting increasingly out of control, calling it a witch hunt, calling it political persecution, calling it a deep state conspiracy. But none of that changes reality. The court found fraud based on evidence. The judgment was entered. Trump cannot pay, so the properties get seized. That is not persecution. That is consequences. That is accountability. That is the law working exactly as it was designed. Fraud leads to liability. Liability leads to judgments. Judgments lead to collections. Collections mean seizing assets. Trump can scream witch hunt all he wants. It does not stop Marshals from carrying out orders. The timing is devastating because Trump is serving as president right now, supposed to be the leader of the free world, supposed to be projecting strength and success, but instead, his properties are being seized for fraud. His business empire is collapsing. His supposed billions are being proven fictional. It is hard to claim presidential authority when you cannot even pay a civil fraud judgment. Hard to project power when marshals are seizing your properties. Hard to look successful when everything with your name on it is being auctioned off to satisfy debts. That is humiliation on a massive scale. That is the symbolic destruction of Trump's brand happening while he serves as president. And this connects to everything else. The Deutsche Bank fraud we covered, the Epstein files Bondi tried to hide, the Meadows cooperation, the Milley testimony calling Trump a traitor, the pardon schemes, the arrest calls, the Venezuela raid, all of it. Because the property seizures prove Trump lied about his wealth, prove his empire was built on fraud, prove his billions were exaggerations, prove his business success was fiction. That breaks down every defense Trump has made, every claim of persecution, every argument that he is a victim of political attack, because you do not get properties seized unless you committed fraud, unless you cannot pay legitimate debts, unless you are actually guilty of what the courts found. So yes, federal marshals are carrying out seizure orders. Trump Tower is targeted. Mar-a-Lago has liens. 40 Wall Street is being seized. Doral Golf Resort, Seven Springs, all of Trump's well-known properties being taken because Trump committed fraud, because he cannot pay the judgment, because court orders are being carried out. And Trump is panicking, melting down, raging on social media while his empire crumbles, while his properties get seized, while his brand gets destroyed. And we are going into exactly which properties, exactly how seizures work, exactly what auctions mean, exactly why Trump cannot stop this next. Because this is Trump's worst nightmare coming true. His properties, his identity being taken, his wealth proven fraudulent, his empire exposed as a house of cards built on lies. Stay with me. It gets so much worse. All right, let's break down exactly which properties are being seized and what the process looks like, because understanding the details makes clear how devastating this is for Trump. Start with Trump Tower, the flagship, the building that made Trump's name known nationally, a 68-story skyscraper on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. Trump's penthouse, Trump Organization headquarters, retail space, residential units. Trump valued the entire building and his stake at over $500 million. The court found the realistic value closer to $80 to $120 million. That is a massive gap. But either way, New York filed a judgment against the property. That creates a lien. That means Trump cannot sell or refinance without settling the judgment first. And if Trump does not pay, New York can force a sale, can auction the property to the highest bidder, can use the money to satisfy the judgment. Imagine Trump Tower being auctioned, the building with Trump in giant gold letters being sold to settle a fraud judgment. New owners strip Trump's name off, rebrand it as just another Manhattan office tower. That is not just a financial loss. That is the symbolic destruction of everything Trump built his identity on. Trump valued Mar-a-Lago at $426 to $612 million based on the fantasy that he could develop the property into residential units. But Mar-a-Lago has a deed restriction. It can only be used as a social club, cannot be developed, cannot be divided, cannot be sold as residential. So the development value is zero. The actual value is as a club. And based on revenue and comparable sales, the court found $18 to $27 million. Trump inflated it by over $500 million. That is not an estimation error. That is deliberate fraud. And now liens are filed against Mar-a-Lago, the property Trump considers home, the property that symbolizes his wealth and power being seized because he lied about its value. Doral Golf Resort in Miami is being targeted. Trump bought it out of bankruptcy, invested in renovations, bragged about making it profitable, and valued it at $297 to $345 million. The court found the actual value closer to $78 million. So Trump inflated it by over $200 million. And now it is being seized, liens filed, Marshals preparing for a potential auction. A major golf resort with Trump's name all over it being taken to satisfy a fraud judgment. Guests at Doral will watch the property get seized. They will see Trump's financial failure firsthand. They will witness his empire collapsing. That is devastating for Trump's image. Seven Springs is a personal property, an estate in Westchester County. Rolling Hills, a large mansion, a property Trump bought decades ago and considered a family retreat. And Trump played games with its valuation, claimed it was worth significantly more than realistic appraisals, and used the inflated value for tax deductions. Now it is being seized. A family property, a personal estate being taken because Trump committed fraud. That hits Trump personally. That is not just a business loss. That is personal humiliation. That is a family legacy being seized for crimes. Multiple golf courses across New York State are targeted. Each one had inflated valuations. Each one was part of a systematic fraud scheme. Each one contributed to Trump's false financial statements. And each one is now subject to liens and potential seizure. Trump will not just lose Trump Tower, he will lose an entire portfolio of New York properties, an entire empire within the state, everything with his name on it in New York being taken because he committed fraud there. The seizure process is methodical. First, judgments get filed in the counties where properties exist. That creates liens. Those liens attach to the properties. They mean Trump cannot sell without satisfying the judgment. They mean creditors have a claim against the properties. Then, if Trump does not pay, enforcement begins. Marshals get orders to seize properties. Appraisers value properties for auction. Auction houses prepare to sell. Public notices get filed. Bidders get contacted. And eventually, properties go to auction, get sold to the highest bidder. The money goes to satisfy the judgment. Former owners in this case, Trump get any amount left over after the judgment is satisfied. But if the money does not cover the judgment, additional properties get seized until the debt is paid. Letitia James has been clear about her intentions. She publicly stated, New York is prepared to seize Trump's assets, prepared to take bank accounts, prepared to collect rental income, prepared to do whatever is necessary to satisfy the judgment. That is not political talk. That is a legal promise. That is an attorney general saying, we will enforce the judgment fully. We will take properties. We will collect the debt. Trump has no way out. No way to avoid paying, no way to protect his properties beyond posting a bond he cannot afford. So seizures become inevitable. Auctions become inevitable. Trump losing properties becomes inevitable. The Deutsche Bank records we covered earlier prove the fraud behind these seizures. Bank records show Trump submitted inflated valuations to Deutsche Bank, used false numbers to get favorable loans, then submitted lower valuations to tax authorities, playing both sides. That systematic fraud is what New York proved, what Judge Engoron found, and what the judgment is based on. So Deutsche Bank records support the seizures, prove they are legitimate, prove Trump actually committed fraud that justifies taking his properties, connect financial crimes to real consequences. The contrast with Trump's claimed billions is stark. Trump always claimed to be worth $10 billion. Ran for president as a successful billionaire, bragged constantly about his wealth, but now cannot pay a $454 million judgment, cannot secure a $500 million bond, has to watch properties get seized because he does not have liquid assets. That proves the billions were always exaggerated, always based on inflated valuations, always fiction. Trump is not a billionaire. Trump is a heavily borrowed property owner with significant debts and questionable valuations. That is the reality these seizures expose. The political damage is catastrophic because Trump's brand was built on being a successful businessman, a billionaire who could not be bought, a deal maker who always won. But properties being seized proves that was all a lie. Proves Trump is not successful. He is fraudulent. Proves he is not rich. He is deeply in debt. Proves he does not win. He loses and then lies about it. That destroys a core part of Trump's political identity, makes his supporters question everything, makes voters wonder what else Trump lied about. That is political death. That is brand destruction that cannot be rebuilt. The base reactions are splitting. Die-hard supporters claim the seizures are political persecution, claim the courts are corrupt, claim this proves the deep state is after Trump. But others, especially business-minded Republicans, see the seizures as legitimate consequences of fraud, see the court findings as credible, and see Trump's inability to pay as proof he is not actually wealthy. Those voters start abandoning Trump, start questioning their support, start considering whether Trump was always a con man. That split destroys Trump's voter coalition, makes him unelectable even within the Republican Party. The donors are fleeing. Major Republican donors do not want to be associated with someone whose properties are being seized for fraud, do not want their names connected to someone who cannot even pay civil judgments, do not want to fund the political operation of someone whose business empire is collapsing publicly. So money stops flowing, campaign contributions dry up, Trump cannot fund operations, cannot compete financially, cannot pay for advertising and organizing. That financial disadvantage adds to the political disadvantage, creates a perfect storm where Trump loses both support and resources heading into the 2026 midterms. The international impact is significant. Foreign leaders watch an American president have properties seized for fraud. Watch Marshals carrying out court orders against a sitting president. Watch Trump's business empire collapse publicly. And they make judgments, make assessments about Trump's stability, about the American political system, about whether Trump can be trusted, whether deals with him will be honored, whether he is a reliable partner. That diplomatic damage takes years to repair, weakens American credibility globally, and shows the real cost of Trump's fraud beyond just domestic consequences. The connection to other scandals creates a clear pattern. Deutsche Bank fraud led to these seizures. Epstein files show financial connections Bondi tried to hide. Pardon schemes show Trump using power to protect allies from similar accountability. Meadows' cooperation provided evidence of other crimes. Milley testimony showed military betrayal. Venezuela raid showed reckless decision-making. Arrest calls show the public demanding accountability. All of it connects. All of it shows Trump as systematically corrupt. And the property seizures make the pattern visible, make the consequences real, make abstract crimes into concrete losses. That is what destroys Trump completely. So let's talk about what happens as these seizures move forward. Because the process takes months, but the outcome is inevitable. First, Trump will file every possible appeal. He will try to delay seizures. He will argue the valuations are wrong. He will claim the process is unfair. He will throw everything at the courts to stop the auctions. But the appeals will not succeed because the fraud was proven with overwhelming evidence, because the judgment is final, because proper legal procedures were followed. Trump's appeals are delay tactics, not real legal arguments. Courts will reject them. They will let the seizures proceed. Trump's only real option is paying the judgment, and he cannot. Second, auctions will be scheduled. Once appeals are exhausted, once delays end, properties go to auction. Trump Tower, 40 Wall Street, Mar-a-Lago, Doral, Seven Springs, golf courses, all scheduled for public auction. That creates a spectacle. Media coverage of Trump's properties being auctioned, images of his empire being taken apart, footage of other people bidding on properties with Trump's name. That is maximum humiliation. That is public failure on a massive scale. That is a consequence Trump cannot hide from. Third, bidders will emerge. Real estate investors, competing developers, maybe foreign buyers, maybe political enemies. Someone will buy Trump's properties. They will pay market value. They will take ownership. They will strip Trump's name off the buildings. They will rebrand. They will erase Trump's legacy from the Manhattan skyline, from Palm Beach, from everywhere. That erasure is symbolic death. That is Trump's identity being literally removed from the landscape. That is a legacy being destroyed by his own fraud. Fourth, Trump might try to flee, might consider moving assets offshore, might try to hide wealth, might attempt to avoid paying even through seizures, but that creates more problems. Bank fraud, contempt of court, criminal charges on top of civil liability. Judges would issue warrants. Marshals would pursue him. International cooperation would help track assets. Running does not work. It only makes everything worse, only adds charges, only ensures Trump faces both seizures and criminal prosecution. That is devastating political messaging that flips suburban voters, turns out the Democratic base, suppresses Republican turnout, creates a Democratic wave, gives Democrats a large House majority, enables impeachment, and destroys Trump's presidency politically. Congressional oversight intensifies because if Trump's properties are being seized, if he is financially desperate, if he cannot pay his debts, then conflicts of interest multiply. Foreign governments could buy his properties, could gain leverage over the president, could influence policy through financial pressure. Congressional committees investigate, subpoena financial records, call witnesses, hold hearings about Trump's debts and conflicts, make it a public spectacle, and show Trump as compromised by financial desperation. That is impeachment evidence. That is grounds for removal. That is abuse of power through conflicts of interest. State prosecutors watch and learn. Because if New York can seize Trump's properties for civil fraud, other states can pursue similar action. Georgia, for election interference, can seize Trump properties there. Other states, for various frauds, can go after Trump's assets in their areas. Trump faces a comprehensive financial attack from multiple directions, cannot defend everywhere, cannot protect all properties, eventually loses everything. All 50 states eventually seizing Trump properties for various proven frauds. That is complete financial destruction. That is ending with Trump owning nothing, living on a government pension, completely broke despite decades of claiming billions. The prison connection strengthens because financial crimes proven through property seizures support criminal charges. Bank fraud, wire fraud, tax fraud, all documented through inflated valuations and false financial statements, all provable with the same evidence used in the civil case. Prosecutors use the civil findings as a roadmap for criminal charges, file indictments based on fraud already proven, get convictions, send Trump to prison. Property seizures become a preview of criminal prosecution, become evidence that supports the prison inevitable narrative, become proof Trump committed crimes that warrant prison time, not just civil penalties. The base fracturing speeds up dramatically. Even MAGA supporters have a limit. They can defend Trump against political attacks, can defend Trump against what they see as persecution, but it is harder to defend fraud. Harder to defend inflating property values by hundreds of millions. Harder to defend having properties seized because you cannot pay legitimate debts. Some MAGA voters see the seizures and realize Trump lied to them, realize his billions were fiction, realize they were conned by a con man. Those realizations break loyalty, create defections, and destroy Trump's voter coalition from within. International markets react to a president having properties seized. Investors question American stability, question Trump's fitness, question whether the U.S. honors its commitments. Stock markets fluctuate. International confidence drops. America's standing suffers. That economic damage creates pressure for Trump to resign, creates pressure for removal, creates the argument that Trump's financial scandals are harming national interests. That is leverage for impeachment. That is reason to remove him beyond just legal violations. Trump's seizures hurt America economically. That is grounds for demanding his departure. The military and security establishment worry about a compromised president. If Trump is financially desperate, if foreign entities could buy his properties, if debts could be used as leverage, that is a national security threat. Military leaders and intelligence officials express concerns privately, share them with Congress, testify if needed. Milley's traitor testimony takes on a new dimension, not just about illegal orders, about a president whose financial desperation makes him a security risk, about a leader whose debts compromise his judgment, about a commander-in-chief who might make decisions based on personal financial needs. That is terrifying. That is unacceptable. That is grounds for removal by any means necessary. The symbolic destruction of Trump's empire is permanent. Even if Trump somehow recovers financially, even if he rebuilds, he can never rebuild what is lost through these seizures, can never reclaim Trump Tower with his name on it, can never get back Mar-a-Lago as his private domain, can never restore his image as a successful billionaire. That symbolic value is destroyed forever. That brand is ruined permanently. Trump becomes synonymous with fraud and failure. With properties seized and empire collapsed, that is his legacy. That is the historical judgment. That is how he is remembered. Not as president, not as businessman, but as a fraud whose properties got seized. The chain of financial problems these seizures create is unstoppable, because losing Trump Tower and Mar-a-Lago does not just mean losing those properties. It means losing the income from them. Means losing collateral for other loans, means triggering default clauses on debt throughout the Trump organization, means chain failures across the entire business empire. Banks call loans and demand immediate payment. Trump cannot pay. More properties get seized. More assets get sold. More debts go unpaid. The entire structure collapses. Everything Trump owns eventually gets seized to satisfy mounting debts. That is a financial death spiral. That is the complete destruction of a business empire. That is ending with Trump owning nothing. The political obituary writes itself. Trump rode to power claiming business success, claiming billions, claiming deal-making skill, but dies politically with property seized, with fraud proven, with empire collapsed, with wealth exposed as fiction. That is a complete reversal. That is total humiliation. That is a political career ending. Not with a bang, but with auctions, with Marshals, with Trump's name being stripped from buildings he once dominated. That is how it ends. Not with triumph, but with seizures, with shame, with the historical judgment that Trump was always a fraud. So where does this leave us? Federal marshals carrying out seizure orders, Trump Tower being targeted, Mar-a-Lago has liens, 40 Wall Street, Doral, Seven Springs, all of Trump's well-known properties being seized because he committed fraud, because he cannot pay the $454 million judgment, because courts are enforcing accountability. Trump panicking, raging on Truth Social, filing desperate appeals, trying everything to stop the seizures, but nothing works. Appeals fail. The process continues. Auctions get scheduled, properties get sold, Trump's name gets stripped. Empire collapses, brand destroyed, legacy ruined. My prediction, auctions happen by summer 2026. Trump Tower goes first, sells to a New York real estate investor. Trump's letters come down, the building gets rebranded. That image dominates the news for weeks, defines Trump as a fraud and a failure. Other properties follow. Mar-a-Lago sells to a hospitality company, gets turned into a regular resort. Trump's name removed, Doral sold, Seven Springs sold, golf courses sold, entire New York portfolio liquidated. Proceeds satisfy most of the judgment, but not all. New York goes after properties in other states. Chain seizures continue. Trump eventually owns almost nothing, lives on a presidential pension and whatever income he can generate from a weakened brand. Political career destroyed by seizures. The 2026 midterms become a referendum on fraud. Democrats win massive majorities. Impeach Trump in early 2027, remove him from office. Criminal charges follow. Federal prosecutors bring bank fraud charges supported by the same evidence that led to seizures. State prosecutors bring charges in multiple jurisdictions. Trump convicted in several cases, sentenced to prison, serves time in a federal facility, dies there or shortly after release. That is the path. That is the inevitable outcome when a president's properties get seized for fraud while serving. The historical lesson is profound. You cannot build a political career on lies about wealth, cannot claim billions when you are actually deeply in debt, cannot commit fraud and expect no consequences just because you are president. The system catches up. Courts enforce judgments. Properties get seized. Lies get exposed. Frauds face accountability. That is the lesson. That is what Trump's seizures teach future generations. That is a warning to future con men who think the presidency protects them. It does not. The law still applies. Consequences still follow. Accountability still happens. It just took too long, cost too much, hurt too many, but it happened eventually. Trump's property seizures represent more than personal failure. They represent the system working, represent the rule of law functioning, represent courts enforcing accountability despite presidential power, represent a victory for justice over corruption. That is what matters. Not Trump's humiliation, but the system's vindication, proof that nobody, not even a president, escapes consequences for fraud, proof that wealth and power do not grant immunity, proof that the American justice system can hold even presidents accountable when they commit crimes. That is a fragile achievement. It took years, required courage from judges and prosecutors, required persistence from victims and investigators. But it happened. And that is what saves democracy, what preserves the rule of law.